Good vibrations.
We're back on the subject of health and well-being for this episode. It is important to take a break from current affairs every now and again and do these shows, I feel, given the pressures and the challenges that we're all collectively facing. Many of us are under stress and anxiety to varying degrees. And if you are someone who's been able to avoid all of that due to spiritual self-work, lucky you and well done. But for the rest of us, we're discussing some ways that people can fortify themselves physically and mentally. And I think there are spiritual components here too. My guests today are Clayton, who is the founder of Root Wellness, based in Tennessee, I believe, out there in the US. Welcome, Clayton.
Mark, thanks for having me. I'm excited to go over what you were just hitting on.
Sure, we'll get to that. And also with us today is a UK customer turned distributor. He liked the product so much, he started becoming an ambassador for him. It's Sandy Goel as well. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
So we'll come back to Clayton in a while. But first off, Sandy, you're on a very different life path right now to what you expected to be the case or planned for. Do you want to let us know what brought you up to what you're now doing and what sparked your interest in this overall subject area of personal health and well-being in these times?
So back in 2016, my mum had a very serious stroke where she was hospitalized for about 6 weeks. Now, luckily at the time, she didn't have any major symptoms, side effects, like, the speech impediments, the paralysis. She had none of that, even though it was very serious. The only thing she did have was that she lost her swallowing reflex. I knew that the current Western medical system wouldn't get her back to wellness, and Mum had always been interested in natural alternatives, but she was on a load of medications. And so I took her here, there, and everywhere to all these holistic practitioners like naturopaths, natural doctors, kinesiologists. She did improve a little bit, but it wasn't enough despite us spending thousands. 2019, she was diagnosed with very early stage breast cancer. The NHS took it out, and the treatment was so successful that she didn't even need the radiation therapy or the chemotherapy. January last year, so January 2020, she passed away very suddenly and very... and unexpectedly from a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot to the lung. How I came across Root was a few weeks after her passing. I had a session with a lovely woman called Claire Harvey, who I used to take Mum to see for bark flower remedies. She's a flower remedies expert. This was to do with my grief. And at the end of the session, Claire said to me, there's a new zeolite product coming out. And I said, Claire, I'm not in the space right now. Send me the info and I'll take a look at it when I'm in the right space. March last year, she started inviting me onto the calls every Tuesday with Clayton and Dr. Dory. And I thought, okay, we're going into lockdown. I've got nothing better to do. I'm not working. My background is a security guard at events. And I started attending Clayton's calls. And he was talking about stuff that I had never heard any holistic practitioner talk about before, which was, in order to add to your health, you need to subtract. And when I say subtract, I mean, take out all the toxins. And I didn't know what he was on about. He was talking about heavy metals and the pesticides and the herbicides. And I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And he was talking about how damaging mercury is, lead, aluminium, et cetera, and this is the root cause of disease. And then he was talking about his products. And I was asking questions like, will it help with cardiovascular disease? Will it help with cancer? Will it help with diabetes? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, the answer is yes. So I was itching to get on these products. I got my delivery on the 7th of April last year. There's 2 anniversaries which will really stick in my mind. The first is the 24th of January, which is Mum left us. And the 7th of April, which is when I first got my first bottle of Clean Slate. I started taking them straight away. And within a few days, I noticed better mental energy, physical energy, brain fog gone, really lucid dreams. Like my sleep was really good as well. And I came onto a Tuesday call with Clayton in May. And I said, Clayton, I'm getting really amazing epic dreams. And he said, it's because your pineal gland is being decalcified. I was like, whoa, I've tried a lot of products to decalcify my pineal gland. And this is just doing it like within a few days. I was just absolutely blown away. And the results we're seeing are absolutely mind-blowing. My friends absolutely love it. And with what I've been through last year, a lot of people would have crumbled. But these products are just complete because they've unlocked me into doing what I'm doing now. I used to be stuck in a dead-end job as a security guard. I still do it now and again. I'm working tomorrow, in fact, just for a bit of banter and stuff. But without Root, I don't know where I'd be. And I've learned so much from Clayton. So, yeah, that's my story, Mark.
Sure. Well, I've actually been having very lucid dreams myself. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been having some really hallucinogenic kind of experiences. So it's like an acid trip without the acid.
That's DMT.
Yeah, big time.
What kind of symptoms do these products work with? And are there any that they don't work on?
Firstly, we don't diagnose or treat anything. But basically, the premise is this, Mark, is that we're all toxic. And the reason why we're toxic is because of pollution. We live in a polluted environment. And that's obvious through the air that we breathe, through the food that we eat, and the liquids that we consume, et cetera, et cetera. These toxins go into our cells and they don't come out. They just don't, every time you breathe, you're breathing in toxins. They stay there unless you get them out. They don't come out naturally. These toxins cause inflammation. The inflammation leads to disease. When these toxins are taken out using clean slate, then the cells can do what they're supposed to do, and then you're on a route back to wellness.
I guess the evildoers of this world and those that don't have humanity's best interests at heart don't really like these products and don't really like this kind of stuff that you're doing because it doesn't suit their agendas, does it? Well, we'll turn to you now, Clayton. So have the products that you've developed been put together in specific response to contemporary ways of living, modern day challenges to our health, which maybe wouldn't have been there a decade or two ago? Are these very much products of now, these times?
Well, it's a really interesting question because it's not just now, but it's 10 to 20 years from now. And it's the important part of understanding the process and the minds behind a product or behind a company or behind a philosophy. And having a wife who has a master's in science, a PhD, a PsyD, an EDD, a postdoc at Harvard in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering, additional postdoctoral certification at Cornell University in pharmaceutical management and nutritional counseling. But in her previous aspects of business career, has worked at Pfizer, Alexion, Johnson & Johnson, Bristol Myers Squibb, UCB, J&J. And she's been at the forefront of biotech and pharma. And I think that experience, she's very unique because she's a mom of four. She had Lyme disease when she was 19 and lost her memory. She's lost one kid to cancer, and that was part of twins of our oldest son. So she's dealt with a brain tumor, spinal tumor, multiple types of skin cancer because of her choice to carry to term twins, where one of them became cancer, and she chose the option of taking systemic cancer to give her now oldest son the opportunity to live. But throughout her career, coming from biotech, coming from pharma, and when she had all of her personal hurdles and had the hurdles for our kids and family, she's always taken her mind and gone we can say the integrative route. And taking that experience, and when we were introduced 6 years ago, coming together to take my experience over the last 40 years growing up around animal and human medicine and 16 years of studying environmental toxicology, and her experience from biotech, pharma, and working in the wellness space to take care of herself, we created what are now 3 products with more on the way, but a focus on addressing what she knew was current. And part of our entire business model was selfish, because she wanted to create products to take care of herself and take care of the kids. And like you asked Sandy, do we have the means of addressing conditions that people are enduring today? The answer is yes, but the biggest question is the fact that what we face is just humanity. So our biggest condition is the human condition. And if you really take the time to understand what the underlying problems are, right? The cause, the etiology. If you understand that, and you know that back in 1974, the World Health Organization, this is before they became an evil organization that they are now. Thank you, Bill. That you can see that in 1974, they published data that showed that at the time, so that's nearly 50 years ago, that the data showed that about 85% of all chronic degenerative diseases were caused by heavy metals and environmental toxins. That number hasn't gone down. And even the genetic conditions that we think are purely genetic, the sickle cell anemia, the Down syndromes, when you get into the science and you really start to do the research, they too are actually caused by mercury toxicity in the womb. So it doesn't matter what your symptoms are. The cause is all the same. The expression of your symptoms, of your symptomology, of your problems, is how your body is being affected by those toxins, and how those toxins and those chemicals and pollutants are working throughout your system, from your brain to your toes, in your organs, in your joints, in your lymph, in your gut, in your brain, that cause a specific expression for you. And it will change over time, because if you don't address the underlying issue, if you think of yourself like a city and you light a couple buildings on fire and you do nothing to put them out, and you've never brought in the garbage company to clean out the trash, you've had people just throwing garbage in the street, so there's waste everywhere, and you have a couple buildings catch fire, guess what happens? The whole city is eventually going to go up, but it won't do it immediately. It takes time. So that philosophy comes back to our principles. How often do you brush your teeth? How often do you take the trash out of your house? Like for me, garbage company comes twice a week. We have our trash cans outside. We fill up the trash cans. I take the trash cans to the street. Garbage man comes in, takes the trash, throws it in the trash truck, takes it out of the neighborhood. We don't do that in our body. That's the key. That's the foundation. And then once you start to do that, you can build upon it.
So historically, people's inclination when it comes to some kind of health defect has been to run along to their GP and go along the allopathic medicine route, the big pharma route. But that attitude does seem to be changing very rapidly. People are now showing a lot of mistrust of doctors and the big pharma industry. Can't imagine why. And they seem to be far more open to natural and holistic remedies. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, it has been. I've been fortunate because of where I grew up, that the last 40 plus years of my life has been focused around nutrition and performance. And people are beginning to wake up. The hard part to this is, though, that you have a completely new industry that's sprung up around people wanting to become well and wanting to function better. So you have companies that sell products and nutritional supplements to quote unquote treat the same issues that drugs have been treated for. You hear the marketing conversations of, oh, well, inflammation is the cause of disease and inflammation is your problem. So you don't take anti-inflammatory drugs, take these supplements because they'll help you address inflammation. Or if you have gut issues, take these things. Or if you're afraid of what's in the environment today, take pine needle tea and do this and do this. Well, all they're doing is shifting the buying behavior from something that is what's perceived to be chemically derived to something that is a nutritional supplement without ever addressing what the underlying issue is. So they're just trying to change the spend, but not ever really addressing having, whether it's the knowledge, the acumen, or the products or the solutions to address what the underlying issue is. And that's what's really important is look, if you want to get well, just remove the cause. Right? It's quite simple. It's like Sandy said, my philosophy for the last 16 years has been pretty simple. Our approach to feeling and functioning amazing. I don't like the term wellness because it's so broad. It's been so prostituted and overused that, and it's so narrow that someone can be horribly unhealthy and get a little bit better and believe that they're well. It's more advantageous to feel and function amazing, because that's what we were made to be. We're a big bundle of light. And just because you have a little bit that starts to shine through the shade that's been thrown over you doesn't mean that all of your greatness is being shown or is being applicable. This is the approach. Clean up the mess, give the body what it needs to start functioning at a level of which you're actually unfamiliar with. And that's where things get really fun. Is don't just do what advertising tells you. Look at what people are seeing for outcomes and really think about the process. And I think that's what's great about the topics that you talk about, with your podcast members is, getting into some of the subjects that make people a little bit uncomfortable, because that's really at its core what's important. You really want to get down to taking care of yourself. You have to get a little bit uncomfortable. And when you do that, when you start to understand what's going on in your body, what's been going on, not just physical, but emotional, spiritual, mental, and knowing that all of those can be addressed if you do it properly, and seeing it from people like Sandy's talked about. When you watch someone have a spiritual or an emotional release of not just the heavy metals and the physical environmental toxins, but the spiritual darkness and the emotional darkness that is held on by a lot of those toxins, but those underlying issues that destroy us. When you see someone release that and they come back and they talk about what this has done for them in that manner, that's when the fun really starts. And that's what's really important. It's not just understanding that, look, we're physically toxic and you need to address these, and physically you need to feed the body with this and this and this. It's the spiritual component, it's the emotional component that are so crucial. And I think one thing that we're doing now, probably better than what's ever been done, is putting protocols together, that we call the Trinity, that are able to hit on every aspect of that. And it's one thing to talk about products and be hypey. It's another thing to have the outcomes and have people come back and tell you, look, I went through this, or for 50 years of my life, I experienced trauma as a child that I was never able to address. I was never capable of actually accepting what I saw, what I experienced, what I endured. And the trauma that I experienced as a child has had this impact on my life for 50 years. And it's done this and this and this. And through this process, I just had this release. And I realized that I can let that go and it doesn't have to affect me. And you see the changes in people, most commonly in women, because they've endured so much more trauma than men have because of how society is built. That's the kind of stuff that you sit back and you go, okay, we're on to a couple things here. This makes life a lot of fun.
So Clayton, you just touched on it there. There is a non-physical, spiritual, metaphysical aspect to what we're talking about here. And anyone that's just concentrating on the physical body in this 3D reality is missing a lot of the point of the way these cures work, right?
I would say you're missing the point, because what people are beginning to understand more now than any point in history, and part of that's due to quantum physics. I mean, look back 20, 30 years ago, people didn't think black holes existed. People didn't think string theory actually existed. Those have all been proven false. And understanding that we as beings are quantum, right? We are at our core energy, right? That's all we are. We are a big bundle of light, and we are this amazing soul source. If you're not focused on the spiritual aspect of what we are, you're missing every aspect of what we are, right? We are a physical expression of light, right? And it's the interesting part, not to get into a philosophical conversation, but my spiritual upbringing has given me an opportunity to study pretty much every different religion. But when we look at Christianity, every image of Christ has light behind him. And it leads to the question of, great, was he created in our image, or were we created in his? And if so, if the argument is, well, Christ was light, that means we are as well. So very simply, how do you turn the light up? And is it theoretically possible that there have been parties in place that their whole goal, not over years, but over decades and centuries, has been built to turn the light down? That's why the Nazis did such amazing work with fluoride, because it calcifies the pineal gland. So it's the most important aspect of the brain, not just for the spiritual center of the brain, but what's interesting in publication that came out 4 weeks ago is that melatonin has been researched and shown that possibly is a silver bullet for addressing the vid, right? And all the concerns with the vid, and or if you want to call it the COVID and everything that comes along with it. But people take supplements for melatonin because they think they need to sleep, not understanding that melatonin is actually produced in the pineal gland. If you decalcify the pineal gland and you give your gut the ability to produce more dopamine and serotonin, the serotonin will actually convert to melatonin through your pineal gland. The extra serotonin while you're sleeping converts to DMT. Why is DMT so great? It's like you hit on initially. It's the psychedelic. People take mushrooms and they're taking LSD to try to get the DMT production, where if you spiritually and energetically and physically are functioning optimally, we produce it. That's where dreams come from. That's why people have lucid dreams, because of their DMT levels being increased, because their pineal gland is functioning the way it's supposed to. If you look at the aspect of a dysfunctional system and how it applies, you can look at the autism spectrum. People look at autistic kids and wondering why they're always flighty, why they're looking around, they can't pay attention on a subject. They're always tracking something else in the environment. They can't stay focused on anything. That's because they're so loaded in mercury and glyphosate and other toxins. Their serotonin pathways are screwed up. The serotonin is converting to DMT. These kids are on a lifelong LSD trip. So imagine going through life knowing that your DMT levels are like you're on LSD. So they live in an environment right now with a block. Basically, they have a glass wall in their brain that inhibits them from expressing properly, but they see things like they're in Alice in Wonderland. They're on a trip constantly. That's why they're like flighty. But when you start to remove the toxins, you bring that wall down, their biochemistry comes back in line, and you have kids that have been nonverbal, for their entire lives. We've got 14-year-olds that have been nonverbal that start speaking in sentences in a couple weeks. And in a couple instances, with a mom who is Dutch, a dad who is American, the kids started speaking in both languages just because of cleaning things up and allowing their bodies to start working optimally. So when you start to bring things all together, you get to see the expression of what we are made to be, which is not just physically feel good. It is made to be an expression of light. And that's honestly what we're doing.
Are there charlatans that have jumped on the bandwagon of the alternative health market, snake oil salesmen, for want of a better phrase, who are seeking to capitalize by pushing substandard products? In which case, how do people become discerning in this regard in establishing who to trust and who not to in your field?
No, honestly, it's one of the biggest problems that we face, because there are so many amazing ingredients like clinoptilolite, this amazing little crystal, and you have all these different companies, and a lot of them are just selling trash. And they use terminology and they use claims that sound really good. But when you compare outcomes, right? Because it's the key word, it's the one thing we judge ourselves on, and it's honestly the one word that we're all judged on. If you're a parent, you're judged on the outcomes of how your kids are, how they function, how they develop over time, what kind of adults they turn into, and hopefully they turn into adults. Because in today's world, at least where I live, kids have so much access to information and other things. I have kids killing themselves from substances that they get from the street because they're trying to self-medicate. And if you're a CEO, you're judged on your outcomes. What's your EBITDA? What's the performance of the company? If you're a practitioner, you're judged on your outcomes. What are you doing with your patients to get them better? If they're not getting better, they shouldn't see you anymore because you're not producing the outcomes. if you're a supplement provider, if you're a drug manufacturer, and it's the interesting part, the difference between the drug companies that so many people have problems with and the supplement companies. Drug companies have done a lot of good in many aspects, and they have to know exactly what their drugs are doing. They have to know what kind of outcomes they're going to produce. They also have to know what kind of outcomes they're going to produce for side effects. And on many instances, the side effects are worse than the benefits. That's why people are beginning to understand. It's like, you know what, maybe this synthetic petroleum-based industry is not the ideal to be consuming on a long-term basis for my health. But the problem is the wellness-based industry, and I hate that freaking term because it's overused and is prostituted by companies that sell shit like you're talking about. They have no knowledge of what they're creating. They have no knowledge of the outcomes that they're creating. They're trying to spin language to sell products so they make money without having the purpose of actually creating a greater good or having a business model that's predicated on creating value for the community that they're supposed to serve. So how do you figure out what you should be using? You should have trusted sources, but even if you have trusted sources, do your research. Find the outcomes. Get in touch with people that are using the things that you're looking at or have experience with the things that you're looking at using. Ask some questions. And then most commonly in our world now, because of how socially connected we are, you have people around you that will share their experiences and say, hey, I'm doing this and this and this, and this is what I've seen in me, and this is something that might be beneficial. And they can lead you to other information that allows you to make more of an informed decision on what you want to do for your health. Because what's most important is, one, outcomes, like I mentioned, but we are all a clinical trial of one. We are all suffering from the same condition. We're all human, but each one of us is biologically unique. We all have the same issues. We're all polluted. We're all toxic. We have that as our underlying issue. But the expression of that toxicity is unique and different in each one of us. Even if you're a twin, right? Our environmental exposure outside of the womb varies. So we're all unique. The only results that actually matter are your own, because those are the only ones that will apply to you personally. Looking at what's happened in somebody else gives you an idea of what you might want to try. But the only thing that really matters is, are you getting results? And the only way you'll know is to try stuff. But you want to do it intelligently. And when you do that, if you're trying something and you see maybe short-term benefits, but over the long term, you're not seeing any additional benefits, stop it. Stop wasting your money. Find something better. Find something different. Find something innovative. And we're really fortunate, because of my wife's background, of having an understanding of quantum physics, working with Harvard's system in nanotechnology and bioscience engineering, that most of the people in that program were either biotech, military, or high-level research, like NASA and such. She's the only one that really came from now the integrative space. But because she came from biotech and because she came from pharma and has a pedigree that is one that her professors at Harvard, it was fun listening to some of the conversations and some of the classes. When your professor at Harvard welcomes you because they remember you from when you were at Alexion, because she was one of the first 30 people hired at the #1 biotech company in the world, it leads to a different perspective. And with different perspectives, you create different opportunities. You can create different products, different mechanisms that maybe have never been done before, that might seem really simple, that might seem like other products on the market, but the outcomes are going to be completely different than anything you've ever imagined.
Okay, so there are 3 key products in your range. Do you want to just run through what each of them is devised to do and achieve?
Yeah, so you have what makes up the Trinity, which goes back to the spiritual conversation, because there's, as George Bush used to say, strategery in a name. So one, you have clean slate, which is really the foundation, right? And that is a passive, systemic, super structured crystal designed to act like a little green garbage truck to remove and eliminate the toxins, the chemicals, the pollutants, but at the same time delivering some very important compounds for development. Then you have restore, because once you start removing things, you want to regenerate. You need to take care of the gut, because we all hear about the gut-brain connection. Many people talk about the gut and the microbiome. Some other people talk about the brain and neurotransmission and such with nootropics, and the importance of brain and cognition and memory and stress management. But what do you do to hit on both of them? So you have to regenerate the gut, the tight junctions, the leaky gut issues. You need to bring those connections back together. You need to kill off the fungus, the parasite, the bad parasites, the yeast, some of the primary issues that are in our microbiome that are really the things that are killing us, that coincide with the heavy metals and the glyphosate and all these other toxins. And then as you're killing that off, you need to feed the gut what it needs to reactivate the production of neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. Because dopamine and serotonin are the two greatest chemicals that we produce. And as we mentioned, serotonin converts to melatonin, right? So there's additional chemical pathways that are important to understand in this process. Or maybe you don't need to understand them, because smarter people than all of us have already done the research. That's my wife. So you have the ability to feed the gut the opportunity on demand, by your control, whenever you want, naturally feed the fire to produce more dopamine and more serotonin. But the dopamine and serotonin is actually controlled and dictated by your intention. So based on what you want to do, the dopamine and serotonin levels will be adjusted in your system, because we as humans are this amazing bundle of light, and we are completely adaptogenic, right? We adapt to our environment. We create our environment. If you give the body the ability to produce these amazing neurotransmitters that we usually will try to find other options for, it could be video games, it could be porn, it could be love, it could be sex, it could be chocolate, it could be, all these different pathways, these different chemicals and different mechanisms that have been put in place to control our behavior because we crave dopamine. What if you're able to just feed your gut the ability to do it? And then everything becomes fun. You want to clean the house? It'll be euphoric. You want to get laundry done? Great. It's on point. You want to do yoga? You'll be more balanced and more focused than you've ever imagined. You want to play sports? You're going to actually probably not fatigue, and you will be at a level of mental performance and clarity and zone out like you've never imagined. It's funny when you look at professional sports, and I know the UK is playing in a pretty important football match on Saturday, that there's a lot of stress that comes in professional sports, right? And you see when it comes down to crunch time, or if the game with Italy goes down to PKs, how easy is it for a professional footballer to score from 12 yards out? It's simple. But why do you see people choke when it comes down to crunch time? Because of stress. Dopamine and serotonin override the stress response. But the problem is being stressed, being under stress. It could be environmental stress because of what we endure on a daily basis, because of what's put in the media, what stress is put on us about what's going on around us, that there's COVID, there's the Delta variant, there's the whatever. You have all of these different factors that are designed to put stress on you, because stress increases cortisol. Cortisol creates havoc in the body. Cortisol shuts off dopamine and serotonin production in the brain, and you can't override it. We can. So when you do all of these things together, the body begins to say, oh, you didn't just give me one thing to address on this little segment over here. You just gave me the whole package. I have the Trinity, because if you know spiritually, you want the Trinity. Well, your body also needs the Trinity in order to unlock our spirituality. So the long explanation in a complex manner, but basically all three are work to combine to put your body in a manner that your body, your brain, your spirituality, and your emotions all come in line properly to function at a level of which you've never imagined.
Okay, fascinating stuff. And any listeners that want to get hold of these products, we're going to put a link in the show notes below to where they can order them directly.
Root is designed to be this amazing party, and you've been a DJ. And the great parties, remember long ago when they existed and you could go out and have fun. There's usually a velvet rope. Yep. To get inside, to get in the club, sometimes you have to be invited and you have to pay a cover charge, right? What we did is we took away the cover charge, and the only way you can get into this amazing party is to be invited. And that's why you'll have the link here. But the even cooler part is if you like the products and if they work the way I'm talking about, and this just in, they do, then it's likely that your friends, your family, the people around you are probably going to ask you questions on why you're functioning differently. But if you start feeling better, you're probably going to tell them. So we created a model that's really simple, that if you share with your friends, you get rewarded for it. Really, really simple, really easy. It's like creating an account with Amazon. Once you have your free account that you can order products, and then you can share your code with your friends. And if they purchase stuff, you get rewarded. And if their friends purchase stuff, you get rewarded for that too, infinitely.
Okay, great. I think we covered it all there, unless there's anything we've not discussed that you'd like to add.
Can I say something?
Sure.
From a spiritual aspect, I mean, I'm a different person to who I was, even in December 2019, because of what these products do spiritually. It's been clinically proven as well, or scientifically proven, that the products put your aura into supernova, and also boost the power of your chakras, your meridians, and your doshas, which are like the Ayurvedic energy points or centers. I don't know too much about Ayurvedic medicine, even though I'm Indian. So, and also your heart rate variability. Scientifically proven to actually reduce your stress levels and your biological age. I mean, not necessarily in terms of looks, although people do say I look younger, and we do have people in the community who I have actually seen like them looking younger as a result of using the products. I mean, Clayton looks younger than last summer, for example. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add that in about how versatile they are, really. And, I'm just so grateful, because without them, I don't know where I would be. I mean, as a customer, I just do not know where I would be. I think the stress levels of last year would have just probably taken me out. But anyway, we're not there, thankfully. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Let me just add another question that's occurred to me. If anyone has been unfortunate enough to take one of the kill shots, the Vs, most of my audience would have known better than to take one of these things, but they may well have family members that weren't so discerning in the choices they made. I get emails all day long from people saying that family members who they've implored and begged not to take one of these things have gone ahead and done just that, and they've suffered horrendous health defects as a result. Are these products something that can work on reversing the negative effects of these Vs?
The data says so. We just had a recording with Dr. Stefan Rao a week ago, sharing his findings of his analysis, some of which Sandy was touching on. We'll link that presentation. It's about an hour long to this recording that he touches on all aspects, many aspects of that. Some of it we can't address directly, because I don't want to get in a fight with the establishment that's, we'll say, sharing all of these issues, right? But the big part to understand is that what's being injected into people, my wife actually did some of the initial research on when she was at Bristol Myers Squibb 16 years ago, when they were doing HIV research with caterpillar larvae and insect larvae DNA and using mRNA delivery mechanisms. And they found that they failed horribly, that it killed most of the dogs and the rats and dogs that it didn't kill after 9 months had reproductive issues that were so horrible. They knew that they could never use the mechanism. And it's funny that only after the government gave an exclusion to all these drug companies that they would have no financial risk, that they rolled out the same mechanisms that were proven 16 years ago to never be effective. And the delivery mechanism that's used in that, some people are finding has graphene. Some know that they're using nano-aluminum that's combined with this mRNA to create these spike proteins to allow better delivery across cellular membranes. And we know that aluminum is a neurotoxin, so it's going to deliver this mRNA to your freaking brain. And we know that this amazing little crystal that we work with, that we turn into a superstructure that's more powerful than it is naturally, has the ability to bind viral fragments, has the ability to bind aluminum and mercury, and has the ability to deliver the most important building block component that we have, which is orthosilicic acid, being bioavailable silica. And on our label, it says it's silicon dioxide because we can't put on the label exactly what we're doing because there's no way to explain it. But if you are capable of removing the bad stuff, and then you're delivering the key building blocks to allow your body in every aspect, genes, bones, organs, connective tissue, hair, nails, skin, to regenerate. Why do you think we call it the Trinity? Why do you think we launched the company 2020, right before COVID? Because 7 years ago, my wife was working in China with hospitals and helping build some of the hospital systems. So she has really, really interesting relationships over there. And it's just weird how life has a journey that 5 years ago, when we first came together, we had some introductions to some people. One of them is of the lineage of the P&G drug company from the Gamble side of Procter and Gamble. And when they met her, because of her background, there was a request made to have her go to Wuhan, China, to work on viral research because she'd done a lot of that in biotech and pharma. She declined because she didn't want to be in China for 9 months. So you fast forward 5 years and you see that everything leads a clue. And a lot of times we don't know the journey that we're on until we get to maybe part of the destination and you look back and you understand why you went through that process. While you're in the middle of the journey, you question it the entire way. But when you get to the end and you get to look back, you go, that's why I can appreciate the conclusion. Because life's not about the end, life's about the journey. And we've had a really, really interesting one as we've gone through this process to create Root and to create these products, and now to look at the outcomes that we're seeing and why we're seeing them and how they coincide with what's happening in the world today and what my wife's purpose, mission, and vision is, and what that means for humanity today and what we're seeing. Because to talk it is one thing, to see the outcomes and to watch the changes, not only in myself, in my wife, in our kids, but in the 30,000 plus people so far in 50 plus countries. You see these changes and you know, okay, great, we're on the right path. We're going to keep doing this. And here's the key thing is if what we were doing wasn't working, we'd change it because we're absolutely uncompromising in quality because we're only driven off of outcomes. If we're not producing them, we'll make it better.
Mark, I just want to add something. For those people who've been injected or those people whose parents have been injected and they won't take the products, you can actually put the clean slate drops in liquid like tea and it will work just in the same way and it'll be completely undetectable. I've got an amazing friend who's become a friend of Clayton now as well, Dr. Marina Carew, used to be a holistic dentist. Her ex-husband took the V, got pretty sick, had to take a few days off work, and their daughter was living with him at the time. And she knew he wouldn't take any, natural supplements or whatever. So she put the drops in his tea within 2 days and then gave him 2 0-in pills, said they're vitamins. Within 2 days, he's back to normal. Now, obviously, we're not going to promise that, but so anyone who's worried about that aspect of taking these products, then that's the solution.
Okay, great. Guys, thanks for coming on today.
This is just for fun.
I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up